Welcome to the Choral Connection, a series of interviews with musicians with whom Maestro Harold Rosenbaum has collaborated over his 47-year international conducting career. We hope you are inspired by their artistry and the stories they have to tell. For more about the series, please visit www.haroldrosenbaum.com.
Good day. Today I have a good friend of mine, Lisa Terry, here to talk to us. And Lisa performs and teaches viola da gamba and cello in New York City, where she is a member of Parthenia and the Dryden Ensemble at Princeton. Lisa is principal cellist and viol soloist with Tempesta di Mare, Philadelphia's Baroque Orchestra. And she serves the Viola da Gamba Society of America as past president. She was a founding member of ARTEC and has performed with the New York Philharmonic, New York City Opera, Juilliard Opera Orchestra, Opera Lafayette, Orchestra of St. Luke's, Winter Park Bach Festival, Bethlehem Bach Festival, Concert Royal, New York Collegium, American Classical Orchestra, Four Nations Ensemble, and Chicago Opera Theater. She earned her degree in cello performance from Memphis State University and continued her studies in New York with Richard Taruskin on her viol studies, VIOL. We'll explain that later. And Harry Wimmer, cello. Lisa appears to great acclaim as soloist in the Passions of Bach, and she reminded me recently that two or three of the performances were with me conducting, because I had forgotten. So, hi, Lisa, and I have an opening question for you. Some of those organizations I just mentioned with which you have played don't seem likely at first glance to be in need of a bass viol player like New York City Opera, Juilliard Opera Orchestra, and the Chicago Opera Theater. Can you please explain?
Well, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, there weren't a lot of young people playing historical performance. So, and certainly not in the big orchestras like New York Philharmonic, New York Opera, New York City Opera, Metropolitan Opera. So they would have to bring in specialists to play continuo for Baroque operas. Baroque operas did get going in around that time, 20 years ago. Established organizations that didn't do much in early music before started exploring Handel and Rameau and composers like that. And so they would bring in specialists to play harpsichord, lute, theorbo, and either Baroque cello or viola da gamba to get the continuo section working well. And then the other instrumentalists could join in, and of course the singers and the conductor. So it was really nice. I got hired quite a bit back in those days to play with groups like that. But then now there's so many young people specializing in early music that, and even in the established orchestras, players have gotten interested in early style and they do it just fine. Nobody needs to be brought in, except for maybe theorbo. That still has to be.
Bass lute, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that they're playing on the modern instruments, but they adjust their style of playing so that they can play Baroque music nicely and stylistically.
Yeah, they've gotten, I mean, if you've heard the New York Philharmonic's Messiahs in recent years, absolutely tasteful and beautiful and stylish. And yeah, it's really great how our sense of style is spreading into mainstream groups too, who don't play on the historical instruments per se, but they sure are playing with beautiful phrasing and articulation.
And who and what organizations are mostly responsible, for what happened back then and the incorporation of these early techniques with modern instruments? I mean, like
Yeah, I think the widespread recordings, beautiful, beautiful recordings coming out of Europe and American groups that just show this breathtaking music and sense of style, and that inspired conductors to try to influence the players of these orchestras to play that way. But also prominent are on the East Coast are Harvard, Yale, and Juilliard, who have started really strong early music programs and beautiful productions that are stylish, and they're churning out the young musicians who then influence people by spreading around the country.
Is Bard, does Bard College also have a program of early music, do you know? Or
I don't think they specifically have an early music program, no, because I know I work with a tenor who teaches there, and he's had trouble getting anything bigger than just a guest cellist or something like that to come in. It's hard to get a whole uh, a Baroque thing going there.
right, well, they have so much else going on. They
Oh
can't.
yeah.
Could you please, let's start from the beginning. Could you please explain what the viola da gamba is? I believe it refers to a whole family of instruments, and that your specialty is the bass viol, or do you play other viols as well?
Right. Well, let me tell you what it is, first of all. So, viola is a word that just means stringed instrument. You know, we call the alto of the violin family viola, but violin really means little viola. Violino is little viola. So, viola is kind of the base word that just is a generic word that means stringed instrument. And it was, you might have heard of viol. That's the same word, but in a different language. Or vihuela is the Spanish word, stringed instrument. So there was an instrument in the Renaissance period called the vihuela or vihuela da mano, and it looked like a guitar kind of. Had that kind of rounded shape, had a flat back instead of the arched back of the lute, of the Renaissance lute. So this Spanish guitar, vihuela, somebody got the brilliant idea to start playing it with a bow. They curved the bridge so you could hit one string at a time, and turned it vertically instead of sideways and played it with a bow like that.
Mhm.
It had frets on it, so it has 7 frets and 6 strings because that's exactly what the vihuela da mano had. It's what
Mhm.
guitars have. It's what lutes have. Um, but bowing it was just a brand new thing. Very successful. People loved it. Now, this invention happened in Italy. So they took a Spanish instrument, started playing it with the bow, and so they called it viola da gamba because it worked better when you turned it vertically and held it between your legs.
Mhm.
So gamba means leg.
Right.
And typical to Renaissance custom,
Mm.
all instruments were created to have the matching the voice range of a typical choir. So you would have soprano sized instruments, a little bit bigger alto size, a little bit bigger tenor, bass, great bass, like that. So that all instruments were like that. Recorders, flutes, lutes,
Right.
sax butts, dulcians, those are bassoon like instruments. And then the viola da gamba family too has little ones to big ones you have to stand up to play. So every gradation of range.
Right.
But they are all held vertically, they're held between the knees, and then they're played with a bow where you have your palm up. So you bow like this instead of the overhand way of the violin.
Right. It's a gentler sound. And
Yeah, and so I play all sizes
oh, I
of
was going to ask you that. I
yeah,
didn't.
but I do specialize in the bass. That became the virtuoso solo instrument around 1600, I guess,
Mhm.
somewhere like that. And so that instrument has a huge repertoire of either solo music, music with harpsichord, music with other Baroque instruments, like you might have a trio sonata with flute or recorder or oboe, something like that. And it was popular and composed for all the way till around the time of the French Revolution. And then for some reason, it just went out of taste and composers quit writing for it for a while.
So the
But
French Revolution was like what, 1789, and
yeah,
Bach
but
died in 50. So did Bach write for the bass viol?
he did. He did not write for the other sizes because the viola da gamba consort or the viol consort was out of taste by the time he was writing. But the bass instrument was still a much loved and popular solo instrument. But he always used it really specifically in the vocal works and the cantatas in the 2 Passions. He uses the viola da gamba to um, state very, very poignant text with a great deal of nobility. usually focus on Jesus specifically.
Mhm.
Um, so the ancient instrument that the viola da gamba was kind of gave that feeling already in the early 18th century of being ancient and of belonging to the aristocracy, something
Right.
like that. Yeah.
Beautiful solo in the St. Matthew Passion for.
Oh, stunning.
And I remember I remember doing it. That particular performance was not with you, but I forget her name. But I had to take a little time, and she had to put down her cello and pick up the viola da gamba, the bass viol, and I think she even tuned it a little bit before she played it while the music was going on. Instead of playing, she took a little break and started tuning it a little bit, like so nobody could hear. I don't know. I think that's accurate at what I'm saying.
Well, that's what I've always done is during the chorales
Right,
are a really good time to tune.
right.
Um, they last long enough, they're slow enough that you can check your notes and get them in tune. Yeah,
It's fascinating. So I wanted to ask you about Parthenia,
sure.
with whom I've collaborated a whole bunch of times. I just love those experiences and the repertoire. Could you tell us who are the other players, and are they from the start? Were they in the group from the start? And how long have you had Parthenia?
Well, Parthenia dates back to around 1989, and a current member, Larry Lipnick, was a founding member back then. You know Patricia Neely, right?
Oh yeah,
She's
I remember her.
yeah. So
Yeah.
she and Larry founded Parthenia together. So
Oh,
they're the original members. Uh,
right.
there are different personnel over the years. Roz Morley is another current member, and she joined around that time, around 89. Um, and then Beverly Au is another current member. She joined in 92. Um, I joined in 95. I replaced another member who had been in the group. And then Pat left the group in 98. So since 1998, it's been Lisa Terry, Beverly Au, Larry Lipnick, and Roz Morley, the four of us.
And that's a long time for a group of an ensemble to be together. I mean, I know the personnel changed, but to what do you attribute its longevity?
I think a total commitment to the repertoire. Um, if we didn't have our own viol consort, we wouldn't get to play this music at a highly professional level. We would still be teaching and going to workshops and playing with amateurs, and at the workshops, getting to throw together a little faculty concert and hear this music. But boy, the chance to work year in and year out and do concert series, develop repertoire, put on wonderful concerts with great colleagues like
Mm,
you and your groups,
thank you.
and make recordings. We have 7 recordings. So
Right. Very nice.
I think
And
that's great over 20 years.
and you recently were asked to perform in Europe at certain festivals, or
Yeah.
maybe China. I know,
Yeah.
right?
We were just in Venice 1 year ago in November of last year. We got to go to Venice at the time that the Venice Biennale was happening. And we got to perform a concert at an installation that some friends of ours were running as part of their culmination concert at the end of the Biennale. We were one of 3 events that day, and we got to do an hour-long concert with Sherazad Pantaki, the glorious soprano.
And where was this in Venice? I mean, what, a cathedral or a concert hall?
No, it was at a small church where this installation was.
I've been to Venice 8 times, believe it or not,
Oh,
7 times performing, and
wow.
stunned by. I mean, I think there are hundreds of gorgeous churches on that little
Yeah.
of Venice. Good for you.
Oh,
Uh,
we were fortunate to be asked to come.
yeah, I remember one time. One time we were performing in a church, and the caretaker was agitated. He pointed to this huge blank space on the wall. He said the night before this original Tintoretto painting was stolen. It must have been like 20 feet wide and 10 feet high.
Goodness.
The fact that they still have those masterpieces in churches is stunning too. You think of it.
Are you familiar with the publication The Brooklyn Rail? I don't know
No,
if you know that. It's a wonderful artsy
I'm a
magazine.
Queens. I'm a Queens boy. I don't. deal with Brooklyn. I'm on.
Oh, okay. Anyway, they're the ones who had the installation and brought us over.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So is there a great need for excellent professional viola da gamba players in this country? And if so, in what cities are they? And would top players have more opportunities in Europe these days than America, do you think?
Um, there, of course, is a great need. Viola da gamba playing and consort music and Renaissance music should be an essential part of everybody's yearly concert season, right? But that being said, it is rather niche. I mean, classical music is niche, and Renaissance music is pretty nichey. So it's a struggle to make a living. You have to just do a lot of it yourself, and that's why Parthenia does its own concert season and networks with all of our friends so that we get hired on their seasons and stuff like that. We just keep it going that way. It's across America, it's really hard to make a living playing this instrument, but the best success is in the bigger cities like Boston and New York, Washington, D.C., the Bay Area. Canada is really good. Montreal, Toronto, West Coast, British Columbia, Vancouver. Um, Atlanta is very good. Has a very good scene. And I'm sure there's others that I'm not thinking of now.
Yeah, well, the fact
Chicago.
What's that? Where?
Chicago. Yeah.
But the fact that you have three places so close by, Boston, New York, and Washington, is really good because you can hop, skip, and jump from one gig to another like that.
Right.
Um, so are you hired more as a bass viol player or a cellist? And which repertoire and instrument do you enjoy playing more?
I think it's always been about equal because as a continuo player, you get hired for gigs to play cello. So, and then with Tempesta di Mare, of the 6 concerts that we do a year, it can be half and half. It can be a little more cello. It's never more viol with them. Of course, with Parthenia, it's only viol.
Yeah.
When I get hired to play with modern orchestras to be the viol soloist, that's viol. Let's see, what was your question?
Well, which do you
what do I enjoy more? I love playing both of them. I can't say I enjoy one or the other more. I know a lot more solo repertoire on the viola da gamba than I do on cello because I've spent more time in my career practicing recital music, difficult chamber music on the viola da gamba. So, yeah.
I know that you hold the bow differently, obviously, but and with the cello, cellists create vibrato. But besides that, are the techniques different?
They are, because with 6 strings and with frets and with the tradition of playing a lot of chords, the same way that a guitar or a lute player has chord shapes, they're always using all of their fingers to cover many strings at a time. And then you bow the strings with the chord instead of strumming or plucking with your fingers.
Right.
But it's still really, really similar. If you just think about the way any guitar player or folk guitar player plays lots of chord changes to accompany any song, there is repertoire like that for the viola da gamba that involves that much dexterity and the fingers working independently across the instrument. Really, really different from the cello and the violin family, where you play melodies up and down the strings, right?
Right.
We tend to play across 6 strings like this. And that took a long time to learn.
Right. And do you ever get confused on the spot? Like you're forgetting which instrument you're playing? No, I'm only kidding.
Not anymore. Used to when I was younger. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Sure. When I was just learning to go back and forth, say in the same concert, put down the cello, pick up the gamba, it was difficult. That was actually a skill to learn to do.
Wow.
To not get confused, like what the name of my lowest string was.
Right.
But these days, it's kind of locked into my brain. I
right.
And when I'm in shape and playing well, I feel just like me playing, and the instrument is rather insignificant. It's more of a in my soul where the music is coming out, and I'm unaware really of the technique of the playing.
That that rings a bell with me because I like to tell my conducting students that if they really practice their technique and get it down pat, not do histrionics, but get the basic technique down, then and practice a lot, practice for hours the technique, then it'll free you from having to think about what to do. I remember in my mid to late 20s when I was studying a score, and I said to myself, you don't have to actually practice anymore because it'll just happen naturally. So when you're on stage, you don't have to think about what your hands are doing. It just happened. It was a great freedom to achieve. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. So I just want to mention before we go that I'm excited about the concert, hopefully that we can do together. We had planned a concert with Charlie Weaver on lute.
Right.
4 professional singers from my New York Virtuoso Singers, and Parthenia was the 21s, the last, I believe it was the last songs that Dowland wrote, Pilgrim's Solace. We had to cancel it, and my schedule is so full once we resume doing a lot of Bach that I proposed to you we do it in the fall of 2024. So I hope we can, I don't know if you remember, but
I do.
I'm doing like every choral movement from every Bach choral cantata, 186 cantatas in 15 concerts. So after that, it's all structured and planned. So after that, hopefully we can pull off this concert. I look forward to it.
I hope so, Harold. We were looking forward to that so much.
We did a lot of planning and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Well, thank you. Is there anything else you want to add to the discussion?
No, just that I think for me personally and for Parthenia, working with singers is absolutely the highlight of the musical experience. So the times we've gotten to play with you and your choirs has been really special.
Likewise.
Just the blend of the voice,
Yeah.
put text to the music while we play the music with them. Right. So satisfying since we don't have text to say. Yeah, and your, the professionalism of you and your group is just wonderful.
Thank you. I just, my first love was early music. When I started the Canticum Novum Singers in 1973, when I was 23, I did it just to do Renaissance music. That was my great love.
Wow.
And I did only Renaissance music for 2 years. And then I told my board I wanted to do the St. John Passion. And they said, what? We're only a small madrigal group. And I said, I'm doing the St. John Passion. And which I did. You might have been one of the performers for that. And I don't know, it was about 1976, I think.
No, it wasn't me then.
Okay.
I didn't do one with you until the 80s or 90s.
Okay. Thank you for being with us. Be well, be safe.
Same to you, Harold.
Okay.
Happy holidays.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Pour